Hello, I'm Gordon Brown, and this is greeneconomy.tv. Welcome to the new series on circular economy and the Circular Economy Show with our resident expert, Chris Whyte, and special guest to be joining us today, Himkaar Singh from Why Waste. Before we get cracking and get into the topic of the day, can I ask you, Chris, to share some thoughts with us as to what we can expect for the series ahead, please?
Sure, absolutely. And just to confirm, Himkaar is from the Compost Kitchen, not from Why Waste. My greetings to Emil Fourie from Why Waste, if he's watching. So yes, the concept at this stage, we've got a new series, and the idea really is to try and bring a little bit more structure to that. What we're going to look at doing is going through a sequence of logic. And what we're going to do is we're going to tackle organic waste first. And the first show is to look at this from a local context. And that's where we have Himkaar here as a guest to look at specific local applications. We're then going to contextualize this at a country or regional level in the second show and look at the bigger scale applications and opportunities. And the third show will unpack organic waste from an international opportunity, looking at some of the interesting stuff that's happening not only within Africa but with international technology as well. We'll then do the same thing with electronic waste, local, regional, global, and then packaging waste again, local, regional, and global. And then the idea is to look at trying to do a little bit of a diversification into different sectors. So the 10th show will be looking at transport and logistics. Then we'll look at manufacturing. And the final show in the series will be on tourism. Often people don't see tourism from a circular economy perspective. So that's the focus, is that we're going to try and just give it a little bit more structure going forward. We have a number of guests lined up over the next 12 shows, 12 weeks. And again, we hope that people are going to engage. They are quite welcome to ask us questions online. Please, this is not just a talk show. We're very happy to engage any questions that come through from the viewers.
Absolutely. And thanks very much indeed for that overview, Chris. So what an absolute pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, every Wednesday, 1 o'clock, this is the place for your insight on circular economy. And Chris has given you the topic map into the future, at least for this series. So what a pleasure. Do join us. Now for the conversation today, Chris, we're going to be talking about organic waste. We're going to bring Himkaar from the Compost Kitchen to talk about the cool things that they're doing. But before we do that, give us a sense of what are the key challenges around this particular waste stream in South Africa for you and I and for everybody involved in touching at some point or along the way organic waste that's coming through our hands? Talk us through some of the key challenges there.
Sure. Thanks, Gordon. So organics are a massive issue. And the simple reality is that we have got used to the hump and dump mentality. So we chuck everything into our black bag, our garden waste, everything goes off to the landfill site, and it sits there and rots and produces methane. Nothing wrong with that if you are harvesting that methane and you are then looking at converting that into energy. But the reality is that we have very few landfill sites across Africa that are properly structured and managed to look at the adequate harvesting of methane. But we need to look at it from many different perspectives. And this is why the circular economy focus is to try and understand how organics fit into a circular economy from that local scale up to a global scale. And the simple problem that we're facing across Africa is that we are looking at anywhere between 20 and 60% of all of our waste comprises organic waste. And that could be your table scraps, your vegetable peelings, it could be wasted food, it could be your garden trimmings. So there's a whole host of different organics that comprise what fits into municipal solid waste. But over and above that, we also have agricultural residues. When we make wine from grapes, what do we do with the husks and the seeds? When we make beer, what do we do with the malt? So there's a lot of agricultural wastes. And then on top of that, the big problem we have in Africa is food waste or post-harvest loss. So those post-harvest losses are a factor of not having the capacity, infrastructure, and logistics to be able to take something from the field to the market before it rots. And we'll discuss that also in the third show of the organic series. So that's it in context. Yeah, the organics are a big issue, and what we're seeing is that our landfill sites are filling up rapidly across the country, and we cannot afford to look at such a high percentage of a product that has other value going in and filling in landfill sites, particularly if we're not managing the gases that come off of those.
Yeah, 100%. And of course, the methane gas that's allowed to escape into the atmosphere, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to recall it's around 13 times more effective at global warming, if you like, than CO2. So certainly a very hazardous gas, and one that we don't want escaping into the atmosphere. I want to just highlight the one aspect of post-consumer food waste. We've got into this habit over the years. I believe it's changing now with online shopping a little bit, but we've got into the habit over the years of doing this big fat shop once a month and stocking up the house, and then things go off. Kids waste food and so forth, and there's this massive waste stream that exists through the residential post-consumer chain. I'd like to bring in Himkaar Singh at this stage and just ask him to perhaps introduce the the Compost Kitchen, and just chat about some of the cool stuff that you guys are doing there, and what role are you playing in addressing or trying to address this issue of post-consumer food waste.
Yes, thanks, Gordon and Chris. I'm really excited to be finally on Green Economy TV. So, yeah, what we do is we collect food waste from households, and then we recycle it into compost using a process that's called vermicompost. Vermicompost is a very high quality compost. And then we give the vermicompost back to customers at the end of the month to use in their gardens to grow organic veg again. But our approach was actually slightly different. So usually waste is seen as a problem, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with it. But our journey started because we needed organic waste as a solution to another problem which we're trying to solve. And that was one of water security. So, our business officially started in 2019, but in 2017, there was quite a bad drought in South Africa, right? And so I decided to leave the country to study a master's degree in water management in Germany. And I lived in Germany for 5 months, and then Vietnam for 5 months, and then Jordan for 5 months to try and find a holistic solution. And the solution that I realized that we need to do is repair our soil by putting organic matter back into it, because organic matter helps the soil hold on to water. So in that case, the organic matter, the food waste, is the solution to a problem. And so we had to figure out a business model that can create that solution on a more scalable model. But we've also decided on a niche that we want to service, because there's many places where the food waste is occurring, right? But we only focus on one specific niche that we're very good at.
That's very interesting. I mean, it's a marvelous process that you went through personally to, in a way, you went to solve one problem, and in finding that solution, you've created a whole activity and a whole a branch of work that's ultimately solving what most of us might think is a completely unrelated problem, and it isn't. And Chris, this is really what circularity is all about, isn't it? It's this interconnectedness of things and how it all fits together.
Well, I mean, that's what we need to understand, is that we need to look at circularity as not this big thing that's being discussed at COP26 or by the United Nations. This is something that every single person needs to be able to grasp and understand and bring into their lives. If we're looking at a sustainable future for ourselves, for our children, we need to embrace the principles of circularity. And that's why if we look at what we're doing here, is to try and understand those issues at a local scale. I've give you Cape Town's figures as a prime example, mainly because Cape Town is probably the most advanced in terms of their recording of the different waste streams. So the agri-forestry residues in the Western Cape are around about 2.4 million tons a year, 2.4 million tons. If you add to that the municipal solid waste, what you put into your black bag, that's also another 2.4 million tons, very similar amounts. But the solid waste, or the municipal solid waste, is only 21% organic, according to the statistics provided by Green Cape. That means another 500,000 tons of organics are going into municipal solid, into the landfill sites. So added together, you got about 2.8, 2.9 million tons in one province alone. And we need to look at that from a solutions perspective. And that's what we're seeing again, the Western Cape leading, that they have now initiated this landfill ban on organics, that they're looking at a 50% diversion by 2022, next year. So they're really putting a lot of effort into that and ultimately aiming for 100% by 2027. But in dealing with that, we need to look at a whole host of solutions, because not every solution is applicable to every individual. And the Compost Kitchen is a perfect example of understanding applicability at scale. So the requirement is that, I'm not sure about yourself, I have 8 compost patches around my garden. I have a very large garden. My wife drives her insane because we get the monkeys in there and the hardy-dars and everything else, but I've got plenty of compost and I like growing my own veggies. But if somebody's living in a flat or a compact sort of residential environment, they don't have the facilities and the opportunity to look at their own sort of composting. So they need solutions, and that's where they need services. And that's the likes of the Compost Kitchen, which is a circular economy service model that allows them to be able to look at finding an offset for their organic waste if they want to do the right thing. And if they do have the opportunity to look at using that compost on a window box or in their garden, that's fantastic. But Himkaar also has models where they can take that product to needy community opportunities as well in food grade. And ultimately, it all comes back to understanding the opportunity of bringing that resource back into the soil, because that's where, as Himkaar eloquently pointed out, we have a big issue, is we need to start looking after our soil. And it's not just water. That's the issue from the soil perspective. What compost and organic matter does in our soil is it creates a biological diversity. It also it saves the water in terms of holding water retention. But what it also does is, through the microbial interactions which have evolved over billions of years, which we're killing through our monoculture applications, is it attracts the nutrients through a symbiotic process into a nutrient-dense vegetable. So from a health perspective, which we have covered in previous shows, one needs to make sure that we are looking at high-quality, nutritious vegetables. The soil is preserved, we're saving on water, we're saving on energy, and we're putting carbon back into the soil. So it's a win-win-win approach.
So talking about your food waste at the residential scale, I mean, it's in some ways it's a tricky one to deal with. So tins are easy, plastic's relatively easy, just get a bin, bomb it in there. But food waste has the potential to be harder to deal with. It can get smelly, it can rot if it doesn't go quickly enough. Obviously, as you say, Chris, if you've got an organized patch and you're doing your own composting, what a pleasure. But for those that aren't, it's one of the trickier waste streams for people to handle. Himkaar, talk us through how the Compost Kitchen is addressing that.
Yeah, it is a tricky material to handle because it changes over time. The can doesn't change so fast. But we've been doing it for about 2 years now, so we figured out all the problems and we found solutions for all of them. So it tends to be a really, really comfortable service and very convenient as well, which is important for if you want a customer to pay for it, on a monthly subscription basis. So, for example, bad smell comes from when the food waste is in anaerobic conditions, which is when there's no oxygen available, and then it decomposes and releases methane, which is and hydrogen sulfide, which are odorous gases. They smell quite bad. So what we do is we drill holes inside the bins to allow air to flow, and that way the conditions are more aerobic. So we tend to not get too smelly bins. But also we encourage customers to put their, food that has gone off in the fridge, to only put it out on collection day and not put it out on day one of the week, So that way it just sits in the fridge. It doesn't spoil to such a large extent while it's sitting in the bin. And then we
That's
also
quite counterintuitive, isn't it? To put holes in the bins, food waste. Oh, let's put holes in. I mean, it's counterintuitive and interesting to learn about.
Yeah, each of the problems we had to study in detail. We had to understand the science of every problem. The smell. What is smell? It's a gas. Where's the gas coming from? You have to understand all of that, which is what I was doing in my master's, is trying to understand the fundamentals of everything about water. And if you figure out the fundamentals, then you can find the right solution, and then it becomes quite easy after that.
So dealing with waste, on the one hand, one of the biggest challenges, let's say, is the logistics of it. Someone has to fetch, someone has to carry it, has to be taken there. How is Compost Kitchen addressing that problem?
Yeah, because food waste collection is fairly new in South Africa, we had to keep the model very similar to a garbage collection model. So that's what people are used to. They put the bin out on a certain day of the week at a certain time. It gets collected and they take their bin back in. So we have the same model, and we collect it weekly from the household, and customers just know we're coming on Wednesday. But because we have a subscription-based model, the customers are fairly sparse sometimes. So it's tricky that some weeks there's new customers and some weeks some don't need waste collection. So we developed our own app to manage the logistics of doing that collection. So each driver has the app and they can see which house they need to go through next. And they can make any notes that they observed. Maybe the waste wasn't out. Then we can explain to the customer why we didn't collect them, if they found out late in the day, or any other records that we need. So we try to bring in technology as much as possible into a basic waste service.
Yes, no, it's very interesting. And just touching on apps, I mentioned a little earlier, and this is just an observation from our own household, is that I've taken to using these online shopping apps, and what I find is I shop much more regularly, but I buy less each time. Not progressively less, but I buy less than we used to. If you're going to mission across to the shop and have your big trolley, then you buy a lot. But if you're able to get these deliveries very quickly, very swiftly, you're able to buy less fresh stuff, and there's obviously less spoils. Is this a trend that you're seeing? And perhaps what other sorts of trends are we seeing? Are you seeing a growth in amount of food waste? Are you seeing it diminishing? I mean, are there any trends worth noting? Perhaps firstly from Himkaar, and then we can maybe ask Chris to weigh in on that.
We're seeing a trend in growth of customers signing up for the service. Since COVID, actually, which was last year, April, we've been having significant increase in signups compared to before COVID, because people are now spending more time at home and realizing how much waste they're producing. And then during a negative time, they're wanting to do something about it. So they've been signing up in quite high numbers. We haven't observed any change in behavior of the waste itself, because that tends to be more driven by other behaviors. So about what they eat and how they handle their food when they bring it home from the shops. Because, like things like a banana peel, you'll always have it. And people don't eat more bananas if they know their food waste is being recycled. And so we're not yet measuring those kinds of trends, but we're definitely seeing a trend of an increase in the interest in wanting to compost.
Great. So more awareness of what they're doing, as you say. Chris, perhaps you can weigh in on that point, or take the conversation in another direction if you wish.
Well, it's to contextualize it in terms of circular economy. So again, there is no such thing that works in isolation within a circular economy. There is an interconnectivity of different things. So, we're talking about Himkaar's focus on water, and you realize that it wasn't the water, it was the soil. And in the soil, by doing that and putting carbon back into the soil, you have additional benefits, because now one can look at local processing of organics, get that back into the system locally, which saves you having to transport it or landfill it. And then the benefits to nutrition, to health, etc. And it's the same thing in terms of looking at technology. And artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things are vital tools in virtually every single aspect of project development that we're looking at in circular economy. So whether you're looking at an app for plastic collection, for e-waste collection, it allows one to be able to track, trace, and measure. And that's very important. Himkaar obviously has got the pain points at the moment, because it'd be nice to have an entire neighborhood and you can just hit that entire neighborhood. But at the moment it's every second, third house in particular areas. So it does make your logistics a lot more difficult. And they overcome that using technology. And it's the same opportunity we're looking at now in terms of understanding the extended producer responsibility. We don't have that in place for organics at the moment. But if you look at packaging, how do you measure it? How do you manage it? Where is it? Who's collecting it? Where is it going? Those are very important components to be able to track and measure this, so that one can manage the process going forward. So Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, app development are all important. The sharing models and service models are also very important in terms of circular economy, and that's what Himkaar does as well. So these are all different components that form part of the circular economy humanosphere. And it brings together the different role players and the applications within that. So when you start unpacking it in terms of that service, you're now providing something that makes somebody feel good about themselves, that they're doing the right thing, that they can get a product back that they can use. They start to understand the circle a lot better. And everybody starts to benefit from this. And then they talk to the neighbors, and hopefully they get on board. And that's the way we need to take this thing forward. We can't expect to sit back and allow government to tell us what to do, or wait for the outcomes of COP26 to say, yes, now we're going to start. It's about doing the little things. And that's why we're looking at the show at local, regional, and global level, is that every single person has a role to play. I would convince everybody to sign up for Himkaar's service. And again, Himkaar knows he's not the only one. There are bigger systems that are looking at anaerobic digestion. They have their own feedstocks. There are other systems for problematic food wastes, like the meat food wastes and things with bokashi. So there's lots of different components to the puzzle. And the more people understand about those different puzzle pieces, the quicker we get the puzzle done.
Absolutely. And I just want to touch on two things. Firstly, I'm going to mention the second one first, which is I want you to just touch on the opportunity to scale up. So Chris sort of touched on that. And that's another issue that exists in waste generally, is this need to achieve scale in order for the whole thing to be able to function commercially effectively. So I'd like you to move from that, but start by just telling us a little bit about your feedback from customers when you drop off this high quality fertilizer back to the household. Are you getting feedback that people are now gardening more? Are they starting to grow their own veggies? Are you starting to feel that aspect of it is effective?
I think that's very strongly linked to Chris's comment about how it forms a system, because we found that there's many knock-on benefits from just doing one service. So we have noticed an increase in people wanting to do veggie gardening. And in fact, that's allowed us to create another service that we can offer them along the way. And they love the vermicompost. They love the concept of getting something back from their waste. It's never been done there. I certainly didn't come across it in the world before we started. And so that makes it something that's exciting, and they share it. They share it with their friends and trying to get their friends to sign up. So that's what we need, is to make it exciting, and that you want to get your friends to join something. Then we can make a scalable difference, I think.
No, absolutely. So perhaps, just talk about the vision for the Compost Kitchen. How big can you go? How big do you want to be? And perhaps just give us a 5-year sort of, if you had a magic wand, where do you see yourselves in the next sort of 3 to 5?
Yeah, the most challenging question I deal with is about scalability, because we have a very high expectation from society to solve the whole city's waste problem, but actually we need small players just doing something in their niche. So by doing our niche, we've realized exactly what customers actually want. And we've also realized that the way we've been doing waste collection is a few hundred years old, is outdated. It needs an update. And so we believe that we shouldn't be carting waste around the city. I think it's very inefficient. If you imagine food waste, it's 70 to 90% water in weight. That means we're actually just moving water around the city in our trucks. So what we should be doing is another model where we valorize waste at the source and then have a model to handle it from there. So we're looking at that in the next year. We're busy already developing it, something that will be able to reach every home in South Africa, still within our niche, of course, and then be able to export that solution to other countries around the world.
No, what a pleasure. So I can imagine a sort of a drying strategy. So you have a way to dehydrate the waste before moving it along, I guess. But Chris, over to you. Perhaps just a final comment, your observation on the work that Himkaar and his colleagues are doing over there, and perhaps also speak about just the entrepreneurial nature of what Himkaar is doing and how you see the opportunities for other entrepreneurs in this space, and perhaps a concluding remark, and then we'll wrap up the show.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I really sympathize with is entrepreneurs and visionaries like Himkaar, because you've got to go through a lot of pain to get to where you are. And kudos to you, Himkaar. I think you've done a fantastic job. I love your model. I think everybody should be taking it up. But, again, Himkaar can't be everywhere. So, we need other models, we need other components, and these all fit together. So each has a particular niche that they need to fill. What you may find is that over time, Himkaar may need to scale up. You might have to look at adapting to an in-vessel composter to manage more problematic waste streams. There may be bigger offtakes, which are then wanting a bagging system. So it's an evolution. The problem often with the entrepreneurs and those with the visions is getting off the ground. Funding is very difficult to come by. And these are often passionate people who kind of don't pay themselves a salary for 3 or 4 years while they get this thing up and running. And I think if we had a lot more support from the financial sector, from the business sector, from the government sector to look at supporting these type of systems, that we would see a plethora of these coming through and making a massive dent on the waste streams. As Himkaar said, it's not just, you're not just transporting water with your organics. If you look at your other waste, your plastic and packaging, you're transporting air. So, we're spending a huge amount of money just running around doing nothing. The model is broken. We need to fix it. So when we understand the different applications, we need to look at what is available. We need to promote people like the Compost Kitchen and Himkaar as much as we can to look at targeting the local side of things. And again, with that development, they will have knowledge and systems and processes to be able to upscale their own applications into looking at bigger opportunities as well. Without obviously forgetting the little guy. But these are all components, again, which we need to bring into the circular economy. And perhaps, we can maybe play out with Himkaar's little model that shows the collection and vermiculture opportunity. But again, just kudos to Himkaar and others. There are great systems. We want to start feeding this product. If you don't want to use the compost at home, we're working with a number of people on the community gardening side of things who would love your product. There's all sorts of different options and opportunities. Get involved, sign up, make it happen.
100%. And so that's all we have time for, folks. It's like a huge thank you to our resident expert on circular economy, Chris Whyte, to our special guest today, Himkaar Singh from Compost Kitchen. Thank you very much indeed for sharing the work that you guys are doing. So, ladies and gentlemen, next week, same time, Wednesday, 1 o'clock, we're still on the subject of organic waste. We're going to look at contextualizing organic waste and agri waste at a national scale. Be there. We'll see you then. Thank you very much indeed. Let's play out with the Compost Kitchen video. Thanks very much indeed. Goodbye for now.